Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sat means truth, Logos means a study or science, Sattology means science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which again comes from a Sanskrit root word called myth, which means a fake lie or imagination. Mythology means science or study of fake lie imagination. These are the literal meanings. Connotations are different. Connotations are mythology means ancient science which cannot be proved archaeologically or narrative wise, doesn't fit into the story of the world which is being taught, or something which has no proofs, astronomical proof. Now, if you look at the histories, and this word was coined during the time of Macaulay, the British administrators to India, because they wanted to make people move away from Ramayana and Mahabharata. That's why the myth was spread. Don't keep Mahabharata in the house, otherwise you will have fights in the house. That's what the myth was spread. So this is all mythology because it has been proved now that RNA invasion theory was a fake news. And most of these were planted news just to make slaves out of the natives over there. Didn't happen. It's all coming out. People are speaking in English. I'm speaking in English, converting from Sanskrit to English and speaking out. And this is a big debate going on in academic circles. I have a very, very special guest today. You have seen him multiple times on our shows. And today we are discussing about Tapasya. And the title of this show discussion will be The Secret of a Yogi Life, which is Tapasya. So without delay, let us welcome the founder of Pittsburgh Yoga, Zeb Homison. Welcome, Zeb.
Namaste, everyone.
What is
It's great to be here.
Thank you. You're one of the best yogis I have seen, and in terms of not just Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that the highest yogi is the one who resides in me, and sees me everywhere, and also it requires a lot of abhyasa, yoga. The entire Bhagavad Gita is about yoga. Whether you call it bhakti or jnana or buddhi, it's all about yoga. So how does tapasya, which you understand the word tapasya, you've read it many times.
Yes.
What do you understand by tapasya for a yogi?
Well, I was looking through the Yoga Sutras the other day when you asked me to be on the show. And the foundations of yoga are something that we in the West a lot of times skip over, something we don't really understand or get taught. We just jump right into yoga asana because it's flashy and it's fancy and it gets our body moving and it feels good. And unless we really are diligent and go back and start to do the work and research and study what yoga really is, a lot of times it gets lost. So to rewind a little bit, to sort of zoom out, what is Tapasya? We sort of have to understand the first two branches of yoga. And stop me if I'm sort of going off track. But the third branch of yoga is asana. According to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, at least. That's what I'm sort of like working off for this discussion. The third branch is asana. And in the Yoga Sutras, it doesn't even talk about asana very much at all. There's a couple mentionings of it here and there. But the first two, the yamas and the niyamas, are very important. And they're sort of the philosophical foundation of yoga. The yamas are sort of how we treat ourselves, how we should look at ourselves in our day-to-day lives. And the niyamas are sort of how we approach society, how we approach everybody else around us. And Tapasya is one of the niyamas. So I pulled out my copy of the Yoga Sutras just to sort of have somewhere to start from, somewhere to go from. And my Sanskrit is, my pronunciation is non-existent, but I will give it a try. It's the Yoga Sutras 243. It's Kayendriya Siddhir Asudhi Kshayat Tapasya. From austerity, on account of the removal of impurities, the perfection of the senses and the body manifests. So at least that's somewhere we can start, right? They talk about it in these ancient writings as tapasya is sort of one of the foundations, the ideals that we should be working towards in order to start to realize ourselves, our true selves, our senses, our body. And when we start to control our senses and our body and our mind, then we can start to actually be self-aware, liberated, if you will. What do you think about that?
That's a good point and good starting. And actually, the pronunciation is important, but not very important also at the same time, because some people can pronounce it, some people cannot pronounce it. Even people in India cannot pronounce it. So it's not very important, but that understanding the meaning in our context is more important. So you mentioned tapa. Tapa means to burn ourselves. And
right. It literally means fire, right?
Fire. And very surprising to note that Arjun is called the greatest tapasvi, even though he is a warrior. And because many of the weapons that he uses requires yoga to manifest them or to use them. Now, when we talk about the yoga life, and yogis is become a buzzword and usually refers to a person who is good, generally, in the US also. If somebody says he's a yogi, means like people will assume that this person must be controlling his senses, he's more controlled, his views are more balanced. Generally, that kind of impression comes in naturally. Even if they're doing basic asana only, they are not getting into deeper aspect of yoga. So my question to you is, like, in your experience, because one thing I've seen and consistently, I can tell my viewers also, I know Zeb for a very long time, almost now, you can say it's 17 years. I know you, 17, 16 years, 16 years, I know you. Now, consistently, he and his family, consistent. There was never a time where Zeb said, okay, let me do some other profession because this is not going good. But you continued. This is what is the best part. So in the tapasvi life or tapasya in yoga, how consistency is important? How you connect consistency to tapasya?
Right. Well, you mentioned the word abhyasa earlier, and I think that's consistency is the most important thing. Abhyasa, as far as I can think, it translates into sort of consistency over a prolonged period of time. So it's a practice, and abhyasa it's a sort of a key concept in any form of study, especially Vedic study. It's not something where you you can learn something overnight and then you've got it. The idea is that you have to build this practice over time with consistency. So it's very important. And tapasya, we mentioned austerity earlier. So the idea that tapa, or this fire, which is sort of the root word, how does fire have anything to do with self-discipline or anything like that? And I think if you think of the idea of adding heat to anything, let's take a diamond as example. In the bowels of the earth, you have a huge lump of coal, which isn't super valuable. It doesn't look like anything much, but over a prolonged period of time, you add pressure and you add heat, and over this huge amount of time, the pressure and the heat start to shape and form and transform this lump of not very valuable coal into something that is very precious, very beautiful, a diamond. So if we think of ourselves sort of like this lump of coal, it's the abhyasa, the consistency of practice, whether we're practicing yoga asanas or whether we are practicing mantra or whatever practice it is, we're using those as sort of the added heat to start to change and transform ourselves, whether it's body, mind, or spirit.
So there is a tapasya of speech. There's a tapasya of involved in every different aspect. Tapasya of the mind, tapasya of the body. Now tapasya of the body, mind, and speech, every aspect they're involved.
Yeah.
So in this, yes, go ahead.
You make a very good point. And, just like practicing yoga postures, the body is a practice. We have to step onto our yoga mat and practice on a regular basis in order to get more flexible and more strong and more endurance. The mind is a practice as well. And what we say, the words that come out of our mouth is a practice. Just the same as, what we listen to, the people we surround ourselves with and talk to, like all of that is a practice. If we're constantly surrounded by people that are gossiping and bad-mouthing others, or if we're constantly watching stuff on TV that's super violent or listening to stuff that's violent, then that affects the mind, and that's going to start coming out of us as well. So we have to, the body is a practice and the mind is a practice.
The three austerities of the mind, or tapa of the mind. Austerity is exactly not an exact translation of tapa.
Right.
Because austerity just means willingly, like practicing penance, which is again not a proper word. English has no direct meanings out of anything.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I was looking up austerity because it doesn't really get the proper meaning across. There are two different ways to sort of interpret austerity, and the first is like very stern and very rigid, and the second one is sort of like living a very simple, like no frills life, and both of those sort of miss the mark a little bit, don't you think?
Exactly. They miss the mark, and it has no connection with tapa, because you can be fighting a war but still engage in yoga.
Right.
It's a
right, as they do in the Mahabharata. Yeah.
So in the Anudvega, you said about the speech, and one of the favorite shloka from Gita on this is Anudvega karam vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat. Means Anudvega karam means we do not agitate others. Satyam means we speak truthful words. Priya means we speak pleasing words. Priya and pleasing are kind of, people can get it. It's a similar sounding word. And hita means some beneficial for somebody else. That's austerity. One vayam tapa uchyate. It is the tapa for the speech. Now the tapa for the mind is do not expect more things from that what you need, and use your buddhi to control the mana, like that. So how I in this yoga world in North America, almost 16. I was reading some numbers. 60 million Americans now practice yoga, adopting yoga as part of their life, with whatever happened in last 2-3 years. and it's going to increase double or triple now. At the same time, there is a need for understanding that how we make our lives more balanced using this knowledge. So, how does it surprise you that Krishna talks these things? Anudaya karam vakyam, not your words should not be agitating to others, should be pleasing to others, should be beneficial for others. So, what is that we can learn in America, because we are used to dropping F bombs in common conversation?
True story. Um, yeah, 16 million people practice yoga. Was that the stat?
60.
60 million. Okay.
Some form of the other. I'm not saying very advanced. Like they have been connected
Sure.
to yoga somewhere.
Yeah. And I mean, that's wonderful. And I really hope it does double or triple. I think the more people practice yoga, and I was mentioning earlier, we sort of like jump the yamas and the niyamas and start with asana. But I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. We have to start to connect somewhere. And especially as Westerners, we're very connected to our bodies, or at least the workout mentality, like we know how to move our bodies. So it's a good place to start. And then ideally, once we start to calm down our mind and focus our breath, we can start to like be still in our headspace a little bit. Then we can take a step back and start to learn a little bit more about what yoga is, and maybe take a step back and realize the yamas and the niyamas and these like foundational teachings of yoga. And I think a little bit that's what's missing in the teaching of yoga currently. Everybody's so focused on touching their feet to their head or getting a handstand, which are great goals. But what's the point? What happens once you get your handstand? Are you then an enlightened being? No, there's still more work to do, right?
There are many words like spirituality is being used in English language. Many words like meditation is used, which is very simple. Manan chintan, which is thinking about yourself. Manan means thinking about the rest of the, meditating upon the yourself, not only yourself, but Paramatma as well as Bhagavan. That is Manan. But in Bhagavad Gita, all these things are mentioned, but yoga is the common word across all these factors. So yoga is meditation, yoga is thinking and feeling, and means ideal way of thinking, feeling, and yoga is the spirituality. And you cannot dissect yoga into multiple areas, because if you look at Krishna speaking, it's talking about yoga and yogi and ya, like he's referring third person all the time. So it's a common word. When we say yogi, means all of these included in one package. That means he is in all three aspects he's living in life. But I know the Sankaracharya made the division, Adi Sankaracharya, around 15 to 2000 years back. He made the division of Dhyana Yoga and all different yoga. He made the names easy for us to understand. And Krishna also says some places, Jnana Yogena, Chapyanya Yagyena. So he uses that words. So now if you look at this way, then doesn't yoga, when Krishna says yoga karmasu kaushalam, is an art of doing work. He says yoga karmasu kaushalam. Yoga is an art of doing work. Then how can people separate these things out? What comes to your mind when people separate these different words and think of it as an independent of yoga?
When what's independent of yoga?
Like spirituality, meditation, and all these different things which you use very commonly drop it.
Right. I mean, everything's yoga, right? When you start to zoom out and look at the science of yoga, it's sort of like it encompasses almost all of human thought and human action. So when people separate out spirituality or separate out, whatever it might be, I think it's a very human thing to do. Um, our perspective so many times isn't great enough to see the whole picture. So we have to focus on one thing or another. So whether it's, my spiritual life, or whether it's my physical body, or whatever it is that I need to focus on right now, back to the idea of tapasya, I turn that into my practice. For me personally, my yoga asana practice was a huge part of my life for like 8 or 10 years. I was on my mat ridiculous amount of time every day, like trying to perfect postures and trying to go deeper. And some people would look at that and be like, oh, that's not really yoga. You're just, just moving your body. You're not going deeper. But you're still connecting. And when you're moving your body, if it's really a meditation, you're connecting to spirit. You're starting to connect to your true self. And I think the case can be the same for whether it's a spiritual practice, a philosophic practice, an intellectual practice, a mantra practice, whatever it is, singing, chanting, kirtan, all of that can take you down the same path. What do you think about that?
That's a good point, because they all lead you to. There's one very important shloka in Gita, and since I can discuss with you, you know it. Many of the people cannot, like who are listening this lecture or discussion, cannot quote where the things are coming from, and I will encourage all of them to read it. It's on 6.2. It says Yam Sannyasam iti prahur yogam chatta vidhi praran. So when you talk about sannyasam, which means giving up voluntarily certain things which may not be good for a conducive life for being a yogi. There are a lot of things there. We will not discuss about those things here. But that is also, it says, Prahur Yogam Vidhi Pandava. You should know that is to be yoga. So even that voluntary act of giving up, even though sannyas is a title given to a varnashram also, but here sannyas is talking about a general person, like anybody can do that. That also is part of yoga, because we are voluntarily accepting the tapasya of not using something which we feel is not good for our spiritual life or yogi life. So how important is that for a yogi?
Hugely. There's another term. So we talked about abhyasa, and sort of hand in hand with that practice, that consistent practice over time, the other concept is vairagya, which is non-attachment, letting go. In the Gita, there's a verse, Krishna is talking to Arjuna, and he says, I don't know the Sanskrit off the top of my head, but he says, abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So whether it's material, like things that we own, or attachments to people, or attachments to the work that we do, like, I did such good work, somebody should congratulate me, somebody should tell me I did a good job. As we practice yoga more and more, we start to release all those attachments. So eventually we are equal-minded in everything that we do. We're still doing our best work. We're still putting feet on the ground and living our lives to the best of our ability. But it's not because we're searching for somebody else's approval. It's because we're doing it as a service to humanity, to God, to whatever it is that gets you up in the morning.
Making a little bit lighter discussion, and the question has come from the audience. And in this, people are discussing about war is the number one topic on students' lives. This program is telecast to students right now, and number one topic over there. And at the same time, many of them are expressing, the question is, yoga gives me a lot of help, but how can we teach the politicians on all sides across the world to start practicing yoga so that they can help the people in general?
That's a tough one. Politicians, world leaders. I mean, there's so much going on with Ukraine and in Europe right now, and other places in the world. I don't know if the current flock of politicians can actually be saved. I mean, I'm sure they can. I'm sure, but they need a slap in the face. And it's been really amazing to watch what's been going on in Ukraine with Zelensky, the leadership there, and how they've sort of like stepped up because they've been facing this hardship, because they've been put under a little heat. All of a sudden, you can see diamonds start to be shaped, diamonds start to be formed. I think politicians around the world need a little bit of fire lit under them, right? In order to actually realize that they are public servants. They need to be doing work for everybody, not just for themselves. As far as like big picture, I think it's something that needs to be instilled, needs to be taught from an early age. It's not these values, especially yogic values, where it's like, you know, seeing the good in others, having this equal vision, taking care of putting others even before yourself. Those are values that need to be instilled early. And our culture, unfortunately, is the exact opposite. It's all about me, mine. How can I get more power? How can I get more money? And you see a lot of that reflected in Russia right now with the autocrats and the plutocrats and the kleptocrats and whatever you want to call them. And you know, all of this is just my perspective, my take on it. But yeah, it's crazy what's going on in the world right now. And I think the best thing that we can do as individuals is start working on ourselves. Start with the self. I mean, be the change you wish to see in the world, right? And if you really want to affect change, once you got yourself under control, this idea of tapasya, of self-discipline, and people don't like the word discipline, but it's important. We have to start to figure out how to have discipline in order to make change. And once we change ourselves, then we can start to affect the world around us.
Absolutely true, because you know, the politics will keep changing one day or the other, and we have a lot of viewers from countries who are affected by wars. And throughout the human history for last 4,000 years, somebody was telling me, not a single day has been passed without a war in some part of earth. 4,000 years, every day there was a war, some places. There are some people losing their homes, some people losing their families. It has been a constant thing. The only time there was no war was the first 1,000 years after the Mahabharata war. The war was so huge and the whole world was involved. And that's why there was 1,000 years of peace. And this is the only time that the war is. So you said correctly, because we have to work on ourselves more than, and it will change the perspective in which we look at things. If each one of us adopts a yogi life or a simple life, which is based on introspection and ourselves, doesn't mean we give up our professions, because we need professions for human society to move forward. We need businesses, we need all kinds of, we need militaries, we need militaries, we need police, we need law enforcement, like we call it. We need all those things. We need spies, we need every single profession which is there. Just the outlook has to be changed. The outlook has to be loka sangraha, which again a word, for the benefit of all, maximum group of people. And there will be always criminals. I mean, because their karma has been like, they'll always be like that. Even Ramayana time there was criminals, Mahabharata time there were criminals. Now, coming to the next part of the question is again came from the audience, and I'm going to just repeat that. The how difficult is tapasya for a student? Or believe me, when you say student, I am also a student. Everybody else is also a student. All of us are student of life, may not be in the college, but we are still learning. So how difficult is tapasya, or how easy is tapasya for a student in their lives?
Tapasya, I don't think is ever easy, right? It's part of the nature of it, part of the nature of the world around us. There are always distractions. There are always, if you're a student, I know in my days as a student, it was, whether you're interested in somebody like dating, or whether you just want to go out and dance, or whether it's a party or whatever, there's always things sort of pulling us out of our day-to-day, like I need to study, I need to go to class, I need to sleep enough, and so I can, function properly for the next day. There's all of that always going on, whether you're a student, whether you're a business person, whether you're, a politician. There's always those distractions. There's always things pulling us out of our main focus. And so tapasya is always difficult, but that means it's always important. So the more that we can build a routine, start to build some self-discipline, so that we are, and realize that distractions happen. It's not like I'm the worst person in the world because I spent an hour watching Netflix, or 8 hours watching Netflix. But can we pull ourselves out of that distraction and get back into the important stuff, the main thing? So start small. My advice would be start to make changes, little changes in your life that are positive, and see if you can maintain those things as a habit, as a discipline over a period of time, whether it's 2 weeks, whether it turns into a month. Get up a little bit earlier every day. Start your routine instead of like scrolling through your phone, like doom scrolling for an hour every morning. Put your feet on the ground, get out of bed, and start with whether it's a meditation or whatever it is that you do in the morning that gets you moving, whether it's stepping onto your yoga mat and doing some asana. The quicker you can do that in the morning, the more successful you're going to be at it throughout the rest of your day. But start small.
You said a very important thing, because waking up before sunrise is one of the most healthy things you can do. And even though we all have long lives, long hours, but when you wake up before sunrise, you have more energy during the day. And then automatically you get tired at sunset. That is a very natural thing to do.
And there's something about that time right before the sun comes up, right? It's very peaceful. It's very sattvic. And to be awake at that, very special time of the day, especially if you're in meditation or in yoga practice, it changes the rest of the day for you.
It's called Brahma Muhurta in Sanskrit, which is a time for meditation, and time for 3 times of the day are very important. One is Sandhya in the morning, which is when the sun is before rising, 45 minutes before sunrise, and 45 minutes after sunrise. Then afternoon time, when the sun just passes overhead, that 45-minute duration is important. And evening is right after sun has set, but it is not dark yet. So 3 times important. So 3 times a day you can choose, but the morning is the most powerful one. And it's maybe, students, it will be difficult for many of us. All of us are students here. Now, some of you are in college, some of us are not in college, but still we are a student. So it may be difficult, but now that is an essential part of tapasya. And if you ever read Mahabharata, Ramayana, or any of the books, you'll always see this aspect of Pandava, this aspect of Hanuman, Sugriv, Rishis waking up before sunrise to catch the first glimpse of sunrise and doing their tapasya while looking at the sun. So sun has been the object of meditation for a very long time on this earth. And we can see Native Americans doing it regularly. Uh, People in Mexico, Peru, South America, Chile, I've been to many of those countries now. And the most important time of all those native tribes is the sunrise. And that's what they start their work, daily activities. Now, coming to the next question on tapasya. Now we talk about speech, we talk about the lifestyle, we talk about the meditation. Now, the one aspect comes out to be on tapasya is the voluntarily. Now, you mentioned niyama in the very beginning, voluntarily following abstinations. People are scared very much from those kind of topics because what can I give up? But we give up many things with age. You may be eating a lot of sugar, but when you start getting older, above 45, you start giving up. So if you're forced to give up, why not give up voluntarily? Try that. So what do you have to say on that?
I think that's a great practice to start, especially it's a discipline. It's a form of tapasya for sure. And people do it, like you see people do it, try to do it in spurts, especially with all the fancy diets and, fancy lifestyle choices people make now. But yeah, the giving up of things, other religions do. There's Lent in the Catholic religion where you give something up for 40 days or however long it is. There's subtle reasons behind that. When you give something up, it can be good for your body physically, like giving up sugar is a good example, or eating less sugar. Internally, it's going to affect your body in a positive way. Sugar is inflammatory. It can cause all sorts of diseases over the long term. But there's also a mental aspect to it. Just having the self-awareness and the discipline to be able to say, no, I'm not going to let my senses control me. I'm going to actually take control. So many times, our senses, our ego are what's running us. And our mind, our conscious mind is just sort of like sitting there observing, isn't it? And so when we actually make the decision to be like, no, I'm going to give this up, I'm going to take a step back, we actually gain a little bit of control. We actually gain a little bit of self-awareness when we do that. It's very powerful.
Very powerful. And, it's very clearly said in chapter 3, we can say, Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva. We need to know ourselves to be higher than intelligence, higher than mind, higher than our senses. And then you can do that. And that again becomes part of a yoga practice. Again, coming back to tapasya. And so the last discussion, where in this series, in this episode, the concept of Atma, which is ourself, self, which you call it, is kept higher than intelligence, higher than mind, and higher than the body. Because it is the life, it is actually I, who cannot see in the mirror. But still, we are trying to talk about doing tapasya of the body, tapasya of the mind, and tapasya of the intelligence. Now, when we look at it as a science, now yoga is a science. We have a yoga scientist, Atul Vyas, also came on the show. So when we talk about it as a science, science is like become the buzzword. Either you're scientific or not. People who even touch upon the science also, they don't do it. When I say science is experiential, and yoga is a science because you can experience it, you can see it in your own body,
and you can repeat it and get the same result.
The same results. So how does this aspect of knowledge where you have the power to control it, and therefore you must do tapasya. How do you say on that? What message it gives to all of us?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
So when Bhagavad Gita says that you have the power to control mind, intelligence, and your body, it's a very empowering message.
Yeah.
And through yoga, you cut down all these lust, kama rupa durasadam, lust which is in our heart. Lust, kama doesn't mean lust. Kama means anything to enjoy beyond
Kama, desire, right?
beyond the like the what you need actually. Beyond that. So what do you have to say on this? Very empowering message for yogis and for non people who want to practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we all do have that power. And I think that the way, especially the way Western culture is set up, we're taught the exact opposite our entire lives. We're taught that we need things to validate us. We need money, we need power, we need cars, we need a fancy house, we need beauty, right? We need a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend that is beautiful. We need to be beautiful, or else, we need all of these things, or else we're not valid. We're not good enough. And so many times that's the message that's sort of like underlying all of our media, all of our news, all of our television, everything that we get fed all the time. And so, of course, we're all a little bit confused. We're all a little bit sad. We're all a little bit depressed because, we can't all have all of those things all the time. So teachings like this from the Gita, teachings like this from any ancient wisdom literature that are telling us, we have the power to affect change within ourselves. If we can start to listen to that, it's just an old book, sure, but it's been around for 5,000 years or more, and people are still reading it and teaching it every day for a reason. There's wisdom in there. There are things in there that can be taken and used to help change our lives. So, I mean, yeah, the more that we can take this idea of tapasya, of self-discipline, of letting go of attachments, and really starting to embody, like taking control and changing our own lives, empowering our own lives. I mean, I think Paramahansa Yogananda said, a person that can change their life, empower themselves, can change the lives of thousands. And that was before we had internet and social media. So our outreach could go really to the whole world. It's just like, how far do you want to take it? How much can you change yourself? Free yourself from this constant confusion, constant indoctrination of Western society, where it's like, no, I need all the stuff to make me a valid person. And the more that you can really start to realize your own validity, realize your own power, you can take that as far as you like.
Very good point, because we are told to seek define our credibility in, or build our credibility in something which is not permanent. And most of those fancy relationships built on those kind of things actually break over a period of time. And then everybody's doing yoga again. So why
eventually they all break, right? Everything in the material world, eventually it all goes away.
All goes away. The body goes away. If you are a body, what happened to you? When you say RIP is being eaten up by insects in the grave, what is happening? It all goes away. But anyway, thank you so much, Zeb. And thank you for all the viewers who are watching the show. And I really got a good questions. I did pick up one or two. But next time when Zeb comes in, I'll have pick up more. But do join his yoga studios, which are in Pittsburgh. If you're in Pittsburgh area, do join there. I'll push the link over there. And also, Zeb also has a lot of Instagram following. You can check it out on that too. You can see what poses he's doing and what he's teaching. And
Yep.
one of the best
Zeb
pictures.
Yoga on social media. And if you want to check out the yogafactory.com is our website.
Yes. And also you can also check out his harmonium playing pictures also, which I love them. So thank you all so much for joining, and namaste. Have a wonderful day.
Namaste.